Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the, I think, hottest panel of the PTC. No pressure, girls. I have the privilege of being joined on stage by three amazing women, and definitely executives that are on fire. So today we will be discussing a panel entitled Building the Digital Fabric Through Connectivity, Platforms, and People. And we will definitely, therefore, talk about the buzzword of all buzzwords, digital transformation, and the impact it has on the connectivity world. So let's start the show rolling. Maybe, Ronnie, just to set the scene, what is driving this digital transformation in your view?
Oh, well, Isabel, first, you know me too well to never schedule your panel on the second day because I lose my voice the first day, so...
Sorry, Ronnie, I was so excited, I forgot to introduce you women.
Yeah.
I got overexcited. So just for you to know who's on the panel, there's the coolest cat of the connectivity world, Carrie Gilder, who's Chief Commercial Officer of Colt, the queen of prefab, Amy Marks, who is CEO of Excite Modular, and last but not least, we're joined on stage by an icon of the wholesale business, Ronnie Klingner, President of PTC' Global America. So, ladies, sorry about that. So, Ronnie, if you want to get us started.
Ask me the question.
So, what's driving this digital transformation?
Hi, everybody. I think that the telecom industry has changed drastically in the past 10 years, more than it did in the last 100 years. Our enterprise globally are transforming, migrating over to the cloud. 60% of the global enterprise is now on the cloud. And the number is just growing. 30% of any software that are developed are on the cloud. Our customers, enterprise globally, are looking for bandwidth, connectivity on demand, everything as a service, instant provisioning, instant, pay as they go, very different from the way our traditional model of doing business as carriers. So that's what's driving.
So really the traffic storm that I call, the explosion of traffic, the type of traffic that is being transported, the expectations from the customer in terms of on-demand, real-time, more control. So how is that impacting the connectivity world? I mean, we talk often about how it's impacting the industry in terms of processes, technology, people, but what specifically does that mean for the connectivity world?
I mean, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, one of the major factors is just the number of endpoints for the connectivity. So if you look at some of the expectations, they say that by 2025, or by 2020, there'll be 25 billion IoT endpoints. And that's obviously more people than we have in the world. So if we have that many endpoints, how do we actually support that from a network perspective? And that means that we have to get further out to the edge. When we're looking at 5G, when we're looking at small cell, it's that connectivity that's the last mile going out to the street furniture and the other aspects, building data centers at the edge, ultimately.
Amy?
I honestly couldn't agree more. I think as it's actually more of a distributed format, the world of the $300 million data center, I'm on the infrastructure side and building data centers and cable stations. That world, you can only have so many very large, huge data centers in the middle of, one location. We have to get, as we want lower and lower latencies with all of our applications and AI and the Internet of Things, we need to move closer to the user, right? So, and closer to those applications. And that's not just about, for me, it's not just about the technology that makes that happen, but the building infrastructure, and I always call it the forgotten infrastructure, the fact that you need data centers, very small ones, in lots of different places, and it really is changing the landscape and the way in which we, distribute the information.
But what does it mean for operators, carriers, or vendors trying to address that? What type of challenges does that present? I mean, it's changing the whole industry, I would think, at one point, really, compared to how we knew it 10, 15 years ago, even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So what impact does that have in terms of business models, in terms of services, how you deliver the connectivity?
I think if you look if you look at the way that companies procure network, they procure it in a very stagnant and predictable way. And that's no longer the way that our networks are moving. And with the implementation of Zoom and Office 365 and all of these elements that consume a lot of bandwidth, you have to treat your network more like the cloud. So it requires flexibility, it requires automation, it requires the ability to consumerize the access into, into the procurement of the network. And I think bandwidth on demand and even AI and some of these capabilities that are coming out, even blockchain, start to build that fabric for us to have a different ecosystem that enables the consumerization of it. And ultimately, that's what our customers want.
Carrie, you made a mistake. You said blockchain.
I did.
Obviously, I'm going to go there.
Sure.
Do you think it's realistic in the maybe short term to have blockchain-enabled connectivity and that have an impact on the industry? Or how do you see that panning out?
So we're involved in a couple of trials right now, actually, with blockchain and with PCCW, actually.
Yes.
And it's been primarily on voice, and it's been looking about how the trading ecosystem actually works and developing some of those connections. And that's been a very successful, maybe you can talk even more about it, but it's been a very successful project. It's one of many that I see coming down the road. I mean, you look at the way we handle security, the way that we look at some of the basic needs and foundational needs of the network world going forward. I think blockchain actually it's a technology that we can utilize in order to fill some of those needs. But we're on the infancy with this initial trial that we've performed.
Well, I mean, I know that we had a very successful trial with Colt, and now we have Orange joining Telefonica and the others, and we have the result from the blockchain perspective of what we're trying to do on a settlement back in October, but we're still waiting for the manual process to be completed so we can compare and see if it was successful. So that's definitely one element of how successful and instant things are. And I think last year in general, not just in blockchain, I think there's from a security aspect, we have a lot of initiative with the global leader forums across it. Is that we come here and we it's cooperation, but we also compete with each other. And because of the explosion of the bandwidth on demand, we each have very strong network across the globe, and we can leverage and complement one another by what was very traditional back in the days, the network-to-network interconnects, but take all the automation component that each of us build and put them all together so we can meet the customer, this explosion of demand, right?
Is it realistic to dream about a fluid network? Like you said, Carrie, you need to have a network that grows on demand and so on. What would need to take place for that to happen? In terms of, AI maybe is one of them, cloudification, blockchain could be part of that. Anything else that needs to take place? And because I think
all those things are definitely critical to the success of it. I think it's also, if you look at the commercial models that we have today, our commercial models are very, they're very old. We're playing in this status quo type of environment of how we actually purchase from one another. And I think that actually has to change in order for us to think about a bigger ecosystem. And if we think about the ecosystem, not just one element at a time, then I think we're going to be more successful. Elements like bandwidth on demand, online portals, those types of SD-WAN, et cetera, those are things that can play into that system. But ultimately, I just think we have to, it's thought diversity around how we're actually driving the entire procurement model around, networking.
But I think
and data center and all subsea and all the other elements.
But what's so great about what you said and so funny, I think for so long everything just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So as you want this technology to be more distributed, the infrastructure that is around that is very big, right? So when you want a $600 million data center, or you want giant tons of megawatt kind of data centers, like really the behemoths, everyone around the ecosystem to support the technology only really knows how to do that. now. So I think we need new players, new entrants with actually different business models, because everyone now has created a business model to support building a $600 million data center. So now all of a sudden you need all these little teeny tiny data centers, and they're not set up to do that, and they don't necessarily have the skill set for that or the practicality to know how to do that, because every small little edge data center can't be what a giant, $600 million data center looks like. You need new technologies, and you need different people and thought processes. I like what you said about different thought process. I mean, we're always blamed at being in our company about we're quirky puzzle solvers, and we find ourselves to be very practical. I think because we don't build $600 million data centers, right? So we're always trying to think very practically. And I think we need people from other industries that have actually solved for different equations like this when things were very big and now they get very small and distributed. What changes, right? How do we actually change our business model? And I think procurement is a big one of that, because a lot of the big companies don't want to get involved in a tiny little 150 kilowatt data center, right? But now you have to. How do you change from wanting a $600 million data center to a little teeny tiny 150 kilowatt, or 50 of those 150 kilowatt data centers? And we don't have the people right now in the industry and the thought leaders, not a lot of them, to actually do that.
So I guess it brings me to one of the questions I wanted to ask. It's about ecosystem. So you said ecosystem, I'm happy you said that, because, and I like, we do say it needs to change, it needs to be different. But what does that really mean? We need a different ecosystem. I completely agree. But who, if we look down 5 years down the path, it's a long time in our industry, 5 years, but who do you think should be part of that ecosystem to make these changes happen? What type of player, new players? How should the current players evolve if they want to remain relevant? What are the pieces of the puzzle? Maybe it's a big question, but at least some concrete answers to give us an idea of what needs to take place.
I think about it, if you look at it from who's the end customer, and then you walk that back, then you can start to actually visualize what that looks like. And if you talk about even a consumer buyer, whether it's a business or it's an actual consumer, both of those are coming into the cloud. So you have to have the content in the cloud provider, you have to have the data center provider, you have to have the fiber provider, the network provider, and all of those pieces actually have to work together in order to provide the end-to-end service to that customer. So that's the ecosystem that I think we need to start really thinking about. How do we actually build that end-to-end solution in a better way, so that customer experience is, the customer is actually getting the experience they expect.
So I guess it brings us to the next, no one answered the question as much as I wanted to, but I know it's a tough question, so I don't want to put you on the spot. But so I guess it brings the next topic for me is partnership. I'm a big advocate of partnership in the industry. I don't think anyone can do anything end-to-end anymore. The same thing in connectivity, and you kind of said that yourself. So what type of partnerships do you think people in the connectivity world should go after? I know depending on what they're doing, but how is the partnership world going to change? Is it going to change? Is it the same, or how is it going to evolve?
I can answer that. Yeah, well, it's not a sales pitch, but we started building this ecosystem, and that's mostly because, again, it's very customer-centric. And how do we bring partners, SaaS providers, cloud providers into one place and build communities and enable our customers not just to buy connectivity from us, but also through this community of providers, right? Not just, it's just us now, mainly with cloud providers and SaaS providers, but how do we bring the other carriers? So if we have a customer at the Bank of America and they want to connect instantly to HSBC in Hong Kong, how they can use our network to find one another. It's almost like LinkedIn, and instantly connect. And so that's where we view, and that's what we were building in the last year, is to create this ecosystem, first definitely with application, using our own backbone and cloud providers, but then expand it further to carriers, whether it's security across the different network, any application, blockchain. So that's where we are headed from our perspective.
Okay. And I guess it brings us to a question that I think everyone on this panel is close to our hearts, the people. Whatever we do in technology, in processes, in systems, if we don't deal with the people evolution, it's never going to happen really. Because culture will be leading the whole transformation. So what type of people need to be involved in this digital transformation of the connectivity world?
Yeah, I mean, like, I can only speak a little more on the subsea side, and I'm looking around the room, and it's very similar. So I don't want to insult anybody, but this, at least specifically on subsea, we're a bit, I would call it pale, male, and stale at the over 55 white male. On the way out retiring, I'm an equal opportunity offender.
Wait, we're going to receive sandwiches.
Yeah, I'm an equal opportunity offender, but I would say raise your hand if you're under 35 in the room. Except for Joe Weinman. Except for Joe Weinman, no one raised their hand. So I look, at the end of the day, even if you talk to like Melvin Greer at Intel for the AI, every time they design something with that type of a group that's very homogenic with like all the same people, and they're usually over 55, male and white, they realize they have a lot of errors and they have to rework. So it's not about, by the way, I'm not a feminist, I'm actually a capitalist. I think this is about money. And in subsea, all the cable systems are now owned by the OTTs, and they will continue to be financed and owned by the OTTs. And so as we're talking about carriers, we have to start figuring out where you fit in that, because we're not just trying to bring connectivity to the developed markets, but to many of the emerging markets where really the money and the people are going to come from in the future, where there are a lot of people with a lack of connectivity. And in order to do that, the skill set is actually either dying out or retiring. You don't have to die tomorrow, anyone in the audience, but they're either retiring or the OTTs are sucking up the skill set. So we have to really look outside of our own industry and solve for this, because we're in crisis actually on that side of the business. And if we don't solve for that, there just won't be skill set left. I literally had people raise their hand in my subsea panel yesterday. I think there were 550 people there, and I said, who in this room are experts on the dry side of this business? Not the optical, but literally on the infrastructure. And 2 people raised their hand out of over 500 people in the room. That's a problem as we're morphing connectivity from subsea through the edge data centers, through the mega data center. The skill set is not there.
It's not an easy problem to solve. It's not going to be solved overnight.
It's definitely not an easy problem, but we actually, we have to remember the problem is about money. It's about survival. It's not about wanting to see somebody that looks like me across the table. That's really what it's about.
Carrie, what's your view?
I don't think about it as a, as an age or a gender or as a,
She works for a bigger company, so she has to be a little more politically correct.
Exactly.
Again, I mean, listen, I won't say it's, I'm a capitalist. All of us want to make money at the end of the day, but what I would say is that it's about the business. And our people are our business. When we think about network, the word itself has different meanings. Network can be the fabric or the infrastructure, but network can also be the element of the people that we bring together in order to solve a problem. And I think when I think about what's required, it's thought diversity. It's not so much whether the person across the table from me looks like me or doesn't look like me. I don't really care what they look like. What I care about is what's in their brain and what they're actually bringing to the table so that we can drive a different thought process and solve the big problems that we have. And yes, one of them is that we are aging out, especially in subsea. That is a problem. We have in Colt, we have a fantastic grad program. And the program has been so successful that we actually bring in a significant amount of grads every year, and we not only put them in one element of the business, but we actually put them in different countries so that they can get that global perspective as they move from one part of the organization to the other. And those are programs that I think we need to see propagate in more of our industry. And sharing programs, we talk about network, but why can't we have sharing programs on mentoring as well as on even sharing our people, so that we have some of that thought diversity and we have some of that cross-pollination of the great minds that are out there across the industry rather than controlling it and owning it within our own entities.
Ronnie, I know it's also close to your heart.
I totally agree with Carrie. It's about the culture. It's, there's no transformation without changing the people's behavior. It's not about the age. It's how leaders instill this this culture transformation within the organization first, giving them very clear vision and directions to where we want to be, where we're headed, empowering the people, right, to make decisions across different functions. You know, agile is it's the latest buzzword, but that's what agile principles are, is to provide people with the ability to make decisions, encourage them to take risks, encourage them to develop minimal viable product in the shortest period of time. We used to develop things for 3 years and come to find out 3 years later that that's not what our customer need. Customer is the center. Instead of having silos of different function, have a team that is across the different function working together with very clear deliverable and direction. So everybody's, you know, driving the same train. That's in the agile terminology. 3 years ago, we were purchased very different small startup software companies, and we decided that we will create a separate organization and not boggle them down with the traditional business. And it was successful just to kind of give them an orientation to how the traditional side is, and it wasn't age, it was just they're completely different people from a software mindset. They're just completely different people. We just didn't want to scare them with our processes and how slow we are. It was good, but last year we thought that, okay, we need to we cannot scale. We cannot scale by separating those skill sets and talent from the rest of our organization. Let's put them back in now that they're familiar with how we operate, and see how, if they can, obviously, onward transfer their skill set, their mindset, the way they think. And again, it starts from the top. We agreed, you know, everybody's talking about agile, but if the top is not agile, nothing is going to work underneath. We started training our, first and foremost, the senior management leaders to understand what agile is all about, and, you know, followed by our technology and our software team and our engineers, and then our product. And of course, you need to bite this big elephant in very small pieces. And we decided this year we're only going to focus on the application component of what we do from a business, because otherwise we'll fail. And we're starting the year with a very good note on focus and
if we push that to the next level, there's a blurring of the line in the digital transformation world between what is a customer, a partner, a competitor. And I've read about the fact that maybe at one point soon, your employees will go and work with your actual customers for a while, go work with your partners, come back, cross-pollination. I think that's probably quite a good way of getting that knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'll push back a little bit, because that's just my nature, as you can tell. But I just don't think any transformation in any level in any industry happens without dissatisfaction. So, I mean, if you look at Dan Miller's formula for change, it starts, you have to have dissatisfaction first. So when I look across the room, I need to see CEOs that are actually unhappy with what is going on in the industry right now, and that they want to see something different. So it starts with dissatisfaction. The formula actually means they need to then have a vision for what's possible and some first concrete steps of action. And all three of those things have to be greater than resistance, right? So right now, we have a lot of resistance to change, because if not, we'd have a lot of young people in this industry, and we'd be flooded with lots of applications. We really need to start looking at where the dissatisfaction lies and how we can solve for that with some vision and some action steps in order to really overcome and get to a transformational place. I think we can have transformation happen to us, but then you're really not prepared, right? So I feel like if we want to prepare for some transformation, we need to focus on that potentially.
Ladies, we have 30 seconds to go. No pressure. One question left. I like to finish with a call to action so that people can remember at least one idea that we've discussed today. So in one word, what is the one thing that people or organizations should do to remain relevant and succeed in a new connected digital fabric? Want to start,
I would say
Amy?
challenge. Challenge everything.
I'd say collaboration.
I'll say culture.
And I would say passion. I always say, if you don't do something with passion, do not do it at all. So on this note, 0. Woohoo! We've done it, girls. Thank you so much.
Thank you.